In this session, we shall see about degradation by improper resource utilization and maintenance, and then later we'll also see about deforestation. And in connection to the deforestation, we'll also see a case study where there is a people's involvement in conservation of forests. So now first, let's begin with this degradation by improper resource utilization and maintenance. So here, degradation of natural resources. So the degradation of natural resources occurs in many ways. One, due to, I'll mention, occurs due to action of pollutants. This we have understood in our previous sessions that pollutants degrade the natural resources. Now here, the degradation of these natural resources also occurs due to improper resource utilization practices, which means that if we do not use the resources in a proper way, then it definitely results in degradation of the natural resources. And what it results, so it results in soil erosion and desertification. So if we are not using the resources in a proper way, it results in soil erosion and desertification, and it also results in water logging and soil salinity. Now first, let's see about the soil erosion and desertification. So let's see the first one, soil erosion and desertification, right? So here, the formation of fertile topsoil takes centuries. So here, the formation of the fertile topsoil will take several hundred years. So here, see that this is the upper layer of soil. So that is the topsoil, and this is rich in nutrients and all, and that's the reason why we call it fertile soil. So it supports a lot of life, and it's very important for growing crops. So that is a fertile topsoil, right? And as I said, that it takes, okay, hundreds of years for the formation of the topsoil, but this easily is being removed due to human activities, because they are not using the resources in a proper way. So let us see those improper resource utilization practices. One, over cultivation, then unrestricted grazing by the cattle, sheep, or okay, the livestock. So I'll say it over grazing. And then deforestation. So cutting down the forest is deforestation. And then poor irrigation practices. So these are some improper resource utilization practices that humans are doing, and because of this, it results in the loss of that fertile topsoil. Now this in course of time it results in the formation of right arid patches. So say suppose here, due to that improper resource utilization, it results in the formation of a arid, okay, patch. And here is an another arid patch, and say here is an another arid patch. So arid, which means okay dry conditions, and as the fertile soil is lost, so here the plants may not be growing properly, and in course of time the region becomes arid, which means a dry region. And in this of course in course of time, what happens, these arid regions may increase in the size. So here I'm just mentioning in the dotted area, you can see that the initial the patch was in this way, I mean in this size, and it started to grow up and it became bigger, and this also has become bigger, and this also has become bigger, and finally all this when merged with each other, it results in the formation of a large deserted area. So this becomes in course of time a desert. Internationally, we recognized desertification is a major problem, and this desertification is right increasing in, I mean, desertification is particularly happening due to increased urbanization. The second one is water logging and soil salinity. Right. So now here, what is actually the water logging? And we'll see that. So here, the water logging is mainly caused due to improper irrigation. So I say irrigation without proper drainage of water. So as a result, the water gets logged in the agricultural field. So here once you supply water to the agricultural field, the water should not stay in the field, it should move away. So if you don't have a proper irrigation, right, or proper drainage of the water, then the water stays right on the soil in the agricultural field. Now what happens if the water stays on the soil? So this locked water will bring salt to the surface. So you can see here, okay, salt comes to surface of the soil. So it draws the salt to the surface of the soil, right? So the salt then gets deposited on the surface of the soil. So you can see here as a thin crust. So thin crust of salt deposited on the surface of the soil. Or it also results in salt collecting at the roots of the plant, right? So if plants are growing here, the salt will get deposited around those roots. So it can happen. So if water is present in the agricultural field for a long time, so what happens, it brings the salt, okay, to the surface of the soil, and the salt gets deposited as a thin crust on the surface of the soil, and it can also result in that soil, I mean that salt collecting at the roots of the plant. So this increased salt content hinders the plant growth. So it will not allow the plants to grow properly, and we also know that what is the reason. So in the first year we might have studied this, that presence of salt, okay, results in exosmosis, and the plants may not get proper, okay, water and other materials, and because of that they may not grow properly. This waterlogging problem, especially, it started in the wake of the Green Revolution. I mean, this problem is mainly because of this Green Revolution, right? So that's, we understand the waterlogging problem results in soil salinity, right? So as the waterlog has occurred here, it results in bringing the salt to the surface of the soil, okay, and that creates the problem soil salinity. And if the soils are saline, then it's quite difficult for the plants to grow in those locations. So that's about the water logging and soil salinity. The next one we shall see about deforestation. So what is deforestation? The meaning of deforestation is conversion of forested areas into non forested areas. So conversion of forested areas into non-forested areas is what we call deforestation. Now, according to an estimate, so 40% of forests are lost in tropics. So in the tropical regions, so 40% of forests, they are already gone. Whereas in the temperate regions, in temperate regions, only 1% of forest is lost. So it's clearly we understand that, so most of the forest is lost in the tropical regions, and this loss is particularly seen in case of India. In the right beginning of 20th century, okay, so in the beginning of 20th century, I mean, right, the forest cover was about 30%. The forest cover was at 30% of, okay, of the total land of India, land of, right. So at the beginning of 20th century, so the forest cover was at 30%. Now by the end of this century, that is 20th century, right, it has gone from 30%, so it reduced it to 21.4%. So it reduced it to 21.4%, right? So but according to national forest policy, so that is in 1988, so national forest policy, according to that, the forest cover should be at 33%. I'll write it here. So according to national forest policy 1988 of India, it is okay recommended. So here we have a recommendation from National Forest Policy that right there must be 33% of forest cover for the plains. So 33% of forest cover for plain regions, okay, and then there must be 67% for hill regions. So 67% of forest cover should present for okay hilly regions. So that is what according to the National Forest Policy of India. So they are recommending that okay 33% of forest cover should be present for plains, okay, and 67% of forest cover should present for hills, right? But we know we have already gone to right 21.54%. So in the beginning it was 30%, even in the beginning of the 20th century also. So none of these recommendations okay right they met with. Now let us see how this deforestation takes place. So causes of deforestation. So first point, forest areas converted into agricultural lands. So I already told you okay in our earlier sessions that the forest areas are being converted into agricultural lands, and later these agricultural lands will become the plots for constructing houses, right? And that results in urbanization. Now anyway, so here to meet the okay food demand for this growing population, we need to convert those forest areas into agricultural lands so as to produce enough food for the growing population. So here I'll see one example: slash and burn agriculture that we used to do earlier. So this we also call it Jum cultivation, that mostly seen in northeastern states of India. So what they will be doing in this slash and burn agriculture. So here the farmers will first cut down the trees of the forest, and then they will burn the plant remains, and whatever that ash they get from burning these right plant remains, they will use that as a fertilizer, and the land will be used for farming, and they will also use it for cattle grazing and so right. Now once the process is completed, so they leave this place and go to somewhere else, and they start the same process, okay. And here in earlier days there was enough time for this the land where already they have did this slash and burn agriculture, so that area it used to recover right in a period of time. But now as this process takes place quickly, there will be no enough time okay for those locations where they have okay used for this slash and burn agriculture. Now, with the increasing population and repeated cultivations, this recovery phase has come down. We are not giving much time for the recovery, and as a result, it is causing deforestation. So, as I said that in earlier days, okay, enough time gap was given to, okay, recover that land wherever they have done this slash and burn agriculture. But due to this okay, increasing population and right, repeated cultivations, we are not giving enough time for that land to recover, and that is creating deforestation. Next, trees are cut for timber wood, then also for firewood, and also for cattle ranching. So locations where they grow this livestock, right, I mean cattle, so it's that those locations we call ranch, cattle ranching. So for these are some reasons for the deforestation, right? So what happens if deforestation takes place? That is consequences of deforestation, right? Now the first point here, it results in enhanced carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere. So it results in enhanced carbon dioxide concentration in atmosphere, right? Because plants are the one who take up the carbon dioxide for the process of photosynthesis. Now when these plants are not present, then a lot of carbon dioxide gets accumulated in the atmosphere. So in our, okay, previous session we also have seen, so what is the consequence of this excess carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Then the next one, it also results in loss of biodiversity, right? So the biodiversity, we know it's a biological diversity, so where we find different species in a particular, okay, area, or over a large area you may find, okay, biodiversity. So now this biodiversity is present mainly because of okay, the plants and whatnot, thick forests, and when we remove these forests, then all those animals, okay, and even including the plants, different varieties of plants or different species of the plants are all lost from that place. So that we call it a loss of biodiversity. I hope you have already studied about that loss of biodiversity in biodiversity and conservation. And now this loss of biodiversity is due to habitat destruction, habitat destruction. So habitat is the location where the organisms live. Next, it disturbs hydrologic cycles. So that is okay, the rain, I mean the precipitation and vaporizing, so those cycles will be completely stopped, and of course that results in less rainfall. And if there is a less rainfall, then in course of time the area will become a desert. Next, it causes soil erosion, and in extreme conditions it leads to desertification. So these are all the consequences of deforestation. So hence we should prevent this deforestation. So the opposite of deforestation is reforestation, which also is afforestation. So which simply meaning restoring forests, forests that once existed in the past, or and because of some or other point it has been removed, right? So whatever that the forest area that has been removed, and now in the same place if you like to grow the trees back, then is the condition what we call restoring those forests, I mean restoring, okay, forest areas that once existed. Now we'll see a case study of people's participation in conservation of forests. So the people's participation in the conservation of forests is very very important. So here long back, okay, in India in 1731, the king of Jodhpur, Rajasthan, so he ordered the ministers to bring wood for his new palace. So he ordered the ministers to bring wood for his new palace. Now these ministers went to nearby forest, okay, so where uh, a group of people used to live, okay, in those forests, and those people are called Bishnois, right? Now these Bishnois, okay, live in peace with the nature. So they don't like to harm the nature, and they will be taking care of all those trees and whatever they like to obtain the food and whatever from the forest. They take them and they give enough time for those okay forest areas to regrow if they have used, and they will be not harming those forests at all. Now, when these ministers went to that nearby village, right, where these Bishnois are living, right, these Bishnois are completely opposed in cutting down those trees. And here, one woman among those Bishnois, her name is Amrita Devi Bishnoi, right? So this woman has shown an extreme courage. She completely opposed cutting down the trees, right? And she hugged a tree and asked the king's men to cut her first before they cut a tree. And what happened? Sadly, the ministers did not stop, and they have cut the tree along with Amrita Devi Bishnoi, and where she lost her life, and also her three daughters and many other people from this area. They have lost life in conserving that, okay, forest. Now, in this incidents, we see here that nowhere in the history we find okay such a magnitude, okay, of a human being sacrificing for, okay, protecting the environment. So we don't see any people who show that courage to lose their life for protecting this environment. So nowhere in the history we have seen. So for this reason, the government of India has recently so announced Amrita Devi Bishnoi Wildlife Protection Award. Okay, so the government of India started giving Amrita Devi Bishnoi Wildlife Protection Award. Okay, it's for all those individuals who show, okay, a courage like this Amrita Devi Bishnoi to protect the wildlife or the environment, right? So that is for all those individuals or communities who come from these rural areas and show an extraordinary courage and dedication in protecting the wildlife. So for all those people, they will be giving, okay, Amrita Devi Bishnoi Wildlife Protection Award here. Now here a similar situation also happened, okay, in Garhwal Himalayas, right? So here, this Garhwal Himalayas, where, okay, a Chipko movement has taken place. So Chipko movement. So here this Chipko is a word that comes from Hindi, which means a hug. Okay, so hugging, right, the trees. So Chipko movement. This has happened in 1974. So in 1974, Chipko movement has taken place. So the local women in this Garhwal Himalayas area, so they have hugged the trees and did not allow people to cut down these trees. Now the government of India realized the significance and participation by the local communities. Right now, so for that case, the government of India in 1980s, in 1980s, okay, so they came up with a concept of joint forest management. So they introduced something called JFM, so that stands for Joint Forest Management, which was introduced in 1980s. Okay, so here this joint forest management is a one that actually is a fact of where these communities, okay, local communities, how they play an important role in protecting the wildlife. So right, so they introduce this joint forest management, so where local communities will be helpful for protecting and managing the forest, right? So of course in that written, so when these local communities, when they right, protect and manage these forest areas, they get a lot of forest products from them, like these gum, rubbers, okay, honey, even medicine also, okay, from those forest areas. And in this way, right, they can help in protecting the forest areas in India. Right, and with this we complete this chapter, environmental issues.